Hi guys, Kristen from Soul Therapy here. As you know, I like to write blogs about what I'm going through, what I've been through, and some ideas of how if you are going through or have been through or struggling with these things, you can work through them to heal them if that's something that you choose to do. Today, I'd like to talk about integration and how that incorporates with your shadow and the transformation within yourself, which will reflect in the transformation in society that I believe ultimately we all want. So, with that being said, if that's something you're interested in, let's get to it. So I guess it's important in this instance to describe what integration really is and kind of a backdrop of where it came from without getting too nerdy about it, which is how I do. But integration was coined in the psychology or psychoanalytic world by the late psychoanalyst Carl Jung. Carl Jung, or Jungian psychology, focused a lot on what we call the shadow, and that's an aspect of yourself that's repressed, and you kind of put all of the stuff you don't want anyone else to see, including yourself, in it. So, for example, if I'm a professional and I'm working in a corporate environment, I may learn to tune down my rambunctious side, or something that I don't want to bring into the office because it's not appropriate for the environment. But in this really simple example, what it really means to do that is to say that this part of yourself is not appropriate, it's not right, and it should be hidden. And of course, it goes a lot deeper than the example that I'm giving, but that is a very surface example where you're putting something of yourself behind. You're tucking it away so that you can participate in a society that, as a whole, society says you are not appreciated for being that. And it's kind of like shaming that part of yourself. When we shame a part of ourselves, or we fear a part of ourselves, or we disapprove of part of ourselves, we pack it up into what we call the shadow. And that is an aspect of the psyche, personality, mental body, even emotional body, that is just not acceptable in society according to what we've learned. So, how does this apply to global change, right? If you want to see a change outside of yourself in society, in the world, then first you have to address where you are a part of the problem. So, you could say, well, I'm not these politicians who are doing this or lying. I'm not this country or whatever you believe has created a virus and released it on the world, if you even believe that that is a possibility. I'm not anyone murdering people injusticeally. I'm not someone who is racist. You have to understand first, when you see this stuff, what does it mean to you? Where does it trigger you? And we've talked about triggers in other videos, and obviously for good reason. Not that I knew that this was going to happen, but it just applies all over the place here. When you are triggered, when you feel shame, guilt, anger, resentment, jealousy, envy, irrelevant, not good enough, invisible, unheard, whenever you feel that, it's an opportunity for you to explore it and find out where within yourself you've been doing it to yourself. Where have you said you're not good enough? Be quiet. Where have you said, felt resentful that maybe you didn't have something that someone else had? Where have you manipulated people to get what you want in life? Where have you done any of the things that are being mirrored back to you? Because it's exactly what's happening. Anything that is a belief system or alive within you somewhere, even on a subconscious level, is being reflected to you in your reality. So, in order to not have it be reflected to you within your reality, you would have to find it, allow it to express itself, and surround it with love and heal it. Because, whether it's your shadow or not, whether you wanted it or not, it made you who you are today. Every experience you ever had was had on purpose by you to learn something. So learn something from it. Learn about yourself. Who are you? Why are you that way? And what positive purpose can it serve in the world today? Look, guys, I don't want you to think that anything that I'm talking about is something that's really simple to do. Just to want to do this work with yourself is a huge step. I mean, trauma therapy or integrating the shadow, these two therapies that I'm moving toward in this conversation are not easy and should not be done alone unless you have a support system or have worked up to the point where you are ready to be alone and to process these emotional traumas from your past by yourself. Why do I say this? Well, when we are finally at the point where it's like, look, I have tried everything. I have talked to people. I've yelled. I've screamed. I've cried. I've fallen into depression. I've tried ignoring it. I've tried alcohol. I mean, whatever. When you feel like you've tried everything and things keep coming up in your face and you are getting this feeling like, look, I just got to deal with it. What am I supposed to do? Where do I turn? I hope to be here to give you that information to say, listen, you can do this, but it's not easy to not be a victim. Victims say, this is happening to me. This is because of someone else, and I have no control. When you start to do trauma work, trauma therapy, inner child work, integrating the shadow, a change begins to happen where you start to realize how incredibly powerful you have always been. And it is invigorating. And it's why anybody would want to do this work. You start to realize that every experience you've ever had in your life was an opportunity to develop. It's not until we get older, and I got to say, more and more people are doing this younger and younger, which is incredible to me because at 13, 15, 18, 25, I would have never thought of doing this stuff. I was still contributing to the guilt and shame that I was building up in myself, to be used today to become the teacher that I hope to one day become. Once we're ready to start taking all of those experiences out of that opportune toolbox that we've been building our whole lives and examining what emotions they created in the moment or what belief systems were created in those moments. We now take back our power and say, I created that. I did that. I chose to think of it that way. I mean, who wouldn't, right? Which also takes you out of victim mode. You're not wrong. You shouldn't be ashamed. Love who you are. Appreciate who you are because you have spent so much time shaming yourself for who you are. Telling yourself you're not right. You're not good. And rejecting you. And of course, what you're going to start to see, because our thoughts create reality, what you're going to start to see is the reflection of that in your outer world. And then you can say, see, I was right. Or become the victim. That person thinks I'm no good. That person thinks I can't do it. That person makes me feel, fill in the blanks. Nobody can make you feel anything. That is an opportunity. Seize it and realize that is what you think about yourself. And that is really hard for people to realize. There's nothing better than knowing that you control your reality. Okay, so now I have just had an argument with someone. And you say, oh, wait, I heard that this is an opportunity for me to explore a belief system that I have within myself, for me to access the gateway of my shadow self, and an opportunity to integrate this so that I never have to experience this again. It's almost as if your soul knows what's holding you back from being the incredible, powerful being that you are intended to be. And so it uses examples and opportunities outside of yourself to reflect back to you what needs to be healed in order for you to have the things you've been praying for. Relationships is a great example. You want the perfect person to come into your life. So your subconscious, your soul, your spirit says, yes, you can have this perfect person. But in order to get through that, you have to deal with this thing first. What? What thing? I didn't know there was a thing. Oh, yeah. And it shows it to you in an experience that triggers you. And most of us go around the trigger. It's uncomfortable. We don't want to have that conversation. We don't want to experience that discomfort. But the answer lies in going through it, having the conversation, being uncomfortable, expressing yourself in ways that you used to hold your voice down, always with respect and love for other people as well. Because whatever you project comes back to you. So being that warrior, being that courageous, brave person who says, I'm going to go through this. When you go through it and you resolve it, all of a sudden the relationship is waiting on the other side for you. I always say everything you ever wanted is on the other side of fear. When you avoid something, go around something, find subsequent ways to deal with something rather than head on, uncomfortable, let's do this. I'm not afraid. That's when you find what you've been looking for and the healing that you've been looking for. So in essence, it's my suggestion that if there's anything going on in the world today that is triggering you, that you take it as an opportunity and sit down and say, how does this make me feel? And when you get that adjective or that feeling, you identify where in your life you've always felt that about something. Where did it come from? When did it start? And a lot of times a mediator, a teacher of some sort who understands this kind of work, and there are so many of us out here, can help you identify these things. It's not always really simple to do on your own and can be pretty scary to do on your own as well. You are accessing parts of yourself that you've never spoken to, that you've never considered were within you. Anyway, ask yourself, where is this within me, and where am I treating others in that way? And there's a whole process about that. It's amazingly profound. I'll give you an example of something that just happened to me. I was doing some trauma work on myself because I've been doing this for a really long time and am capable of doing it on myself. First thing I thought about was, where did I experience something traumatic in my childhood? When we were growing up, I guess parents were a lot more hands-on than parents are today, and so was my dad. But I remembered a specific incident, and I must have been about 7 years old, and it's just stuck with me. It's always been very painful for me, and the incident that happened between us made me feel insignificant, worthless as a 7-year-old, unimportant, unloved, shamed. It was just like, if I told you guys, which I won't, out of respect for my father, but you'd be like, really, that made you feel all those things? But I am a human being and I perceive things in my own way, just as you do. And my reality is not the same as yours. And this little thing made me feel oppressed, held down, insignificant, like I was nobody and nothing. So I'm exploring this in trauma and trying to understand where in my body I feel it, trying to actually relive the situation, which is not always safe. Please do not try this at home if you have never done it by yourself. Um, and wow, a lot of stuff started coming up that I did not even know existed. I was able to locate where blockages of energy were trapped in my body and speak to them and find out what they represented. And that was blew my mind when I found an aspect of my shadow that needed to be integrated. And I'm still working on that, but it's an aspect of my shadow that represented fighting. And sitting there appreciating that part of myself, a question came into my mind. Where in your life have you done this to another? As I'm allowing myself to move through this experience and refeel the emotions, but from my adult perspective, from what I know now of who I am, and not from that child's perspective, limited perspective, really. I realized that in that situation with what was happening, I developed a belief system that says that if I am not perfect, then I'm not lovable. I realized that I made a decision. I learned something in that moment, that people who are stupid, irresponsible, or clumsy are not lovable. And the goal of that 7-year-old child was to be accepted and loved and to belong. And so by realizing in that moment that if I was being that way, I wouldn't be loved, I was now putting on some armor and saying, okay, you can't be like that. Otherwise, you're not going to be loved. So let's not do that again. Right. Of course, my father didn't realize that he was shaming me, even though as a parent, I realized that, yes, we do realize that. We are manipulating. We are shaming our children when they do something that we believe or have been taught will not allow you to be accepted in this world. So you have to be like this, otherwise you're not going to be accepted in this world. When I came to that realization, I have worked really, really hard over the past, let's say 30 years to become perfect at everything that I do, to the point where I like things a certain way. And if people come into my reality or my environment and fiddle with the way that I have perfectly set it up for myself, it triggers me. Hence why I did this trauma work, because I was triggered and found out why. I never knew that I had this subconscious belief system that said that if you don't assert your intelligence, then you will be unlovable. And all this started flooding in memories throughout, my life about how I have tried so hard to make sure that I am responsible, educated, and perfect so that I can be loved. But it was all made up in my mind by a 7-year-old. It wasn't true. Now, once you locate that, again, the next step would be to find out where you're doing it to other people. Where am I shaming my child for not being perfect instead of letting him just be a kid? So the moral of the story, folks, is if you see something outside of yourself that triggers you immensely, if you choose to, and in private, relax, shut your eyes, and ask your higher self or your soul to show you a time in your life that was extremely traumatizing and that you're ready to heal. Think about a time in your life when you had a traumatizing experience. It doesn't have to be witnessing a murder or death, or trauma could be anything that really sticks out as, a time when you were genuinely hurt, confused, you spilled milk and you were extremely shamed for it. And you're like 5. And, you were made to make it look like, you were a captain at a Nazi death camp. Like, seriously, I just spilled some milk. Kids don't say that. Seriously, I just spilled some milk. You're totally overreacting. They're 5. They're like, oh my God, I'm the worst person in the world. That's trauma. And that is the building blocks for which you become who you are. So, get into that really calm, focused, relaxed state and locate that. And not as the child, but as an adult, looking at the situation, review it and see what comes up for you. As always, if you need any help, any guidance, you can contact me by email at kristen@soultherapytct.com or visit my website at soultherapytct.com. Okay, lovies, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it wasn't too long. If you ever have any suggestions for anything else that you'd like me to discuss, nothing is taboo. I hope you're having a wonderful day. And please, any chance you get, send out love to the world, to the collective. And always give out what you want to receive from your heart. Bye, lovies.